Our webinar today, specifically on GIS and how that applies to Next-Gen 911. Today, we've got 3 of these throughout the year, but today's course, we're going to go over topology to the rescue. And to present on that is going to be Erin Strickler, one of the professional engineers that we have on the staff. She's a director of data services. She also heads up our NG9-1-1 team. So all the projects that we have completed or are currently working on, which I believe is still primarily in Illinois. We're branching out, getting into Wisconsin, and as other states transition over to this system, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done and will continue to need to be done through the years. But for our webinars, just to let you guys know what's coming up. A couple weeks, we've got part 1 of 3 going over ArcGIS indoors. So that's how points of interest can enhance your indoor maps. Jonathan Hodel, he is doing a 3-part series on that throughout the year. April 7th, then we've got a bit of a break, but starting up April 7th, then is exploring upgrades to our sign inventory management system. So that's with Mike Gennard, one of our GIS technicians on staff, who heads up our sign team, sign inventory management system there. And then starting in May, we've got the second of these GIS 911 webinars with Nina, Legacy, and CAD. Oh my. Of course, you can find all of those at cloudpointgeo.com/webinars, and we use Zoom for all our webinars. So feel free to put anything in the chat box. If you have questions or the Q&A, you can use that as well here for the webinars. I think we'll have a poll question. So we'll get that up there as well. We like to have participation. Just to, oh, I forgot I had some little fancy animations. Just to give you guys some overview of our company. Of course, we do a lot of things: asset management, 911, cemetery mapping, indoor mapping. That's our newest specialty, of course, and then sign-ops. But today, primarily talking about GIS and how that relates to Next-Gen 911 system. So we are going to turn it over to Erin.
All right. Thanks, Bill. So I wanted to start with a quick definition of topology. When I started, I came from the engineering field about 3 years ago, and when someone said the word topology, I was like, what's that? So just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. And this is from Esri, just the arrangement of how point, line, and polygon features share geometry. So we set up rules to make sure those rules are followed, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And briefly want to talk about the requirements. So you need a standard or an advanced license of ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap. I am going to be in ArcGIS Pro today. And like we will say probably until we're blue in the face, if you're not using ArcGIS Pro yet, today is a great day to start. And this workflow is a good workflow to start with too, because there are some workflows in Pro that make your feature classes unusable in ArcMap, like attribute rules. If you add attribute rules in Pro, you can't use that in ArcMap anymore, but that's not true of topology. So you can have this data set live in an ArcMap project and in a Pro project, and kind of play around with topology in Pro. And there are some good advantages when we talk about cleaning up the topology errors that we find that I'll talk about when we get into the demo. So if you're not using Pro yet, this would be a great way to kind of test out the waters. So before we get started, Bill's going to share a link. Esri in their documentation has a great table that kind of walks you through all the steps of creating a topology. So I'm going to talk today about the 5 that we have circled: how to create the feature data set, create your topology, build and validate the topology, and then how to edit and then revalidate, sort of that circular workflow at the end. So there are other things you can do with it, and I just wanted to make sure you guys had that information. They'll dive in a little bit deeper than I'll have time to today, but hopefully today at least you'll walk away with enough knowledge to get started on your own. So with that, as I'm switching screens, Bill is going to throw up a poll to kind of give us an idea of what you got, how familiar you guys are with topology.
Yep, just one question here for you guys. So just to kind of gauge where we're at with that. What's your familiarity with topology? None, here to learn, some, familiar with what it is but want to learn more, and I'm a pro, just looking for new tips and insights. And if you're a pro, then maybe we'll have you speak at the next one. But let's see, I'll give you guys a couple more minutes here for people to... Looks like we are 100% overwhelmingly some familiar with what it is, but want to learn more.
That's perfect. That's kind of the group that I based this demo around, so I won't have to change much. So thanks guys for answering that. Just want to get to my notes to make sure I'm not missing any steps here. So we're going to start by creating a feature data set. What I have in the map here is layers you'll be familiar with if you're familiar with the NG9-1-1 schema. No matter what state you're in, whether that's Illinois or Wisconsin, all the states are based on the NINA standard, so this will all be very familiar. But I have an EMS, a law, and a fire boundary here just stacked on top of each other, and I also have a PSAP boundary just for demonstration purposes. So the first step is to create a feature data set. If you're using a pre-made template, either from NINA or I happen to have here the state of Illinois' template, I am going to, okay, I'm going to open this up. So in Illinois' template, there are recommended data set, a required data set, and a strongly recommended data set. And within each of those are the layers that exist, plus a pre-made topology, set of topology rules. So you may not have to start from the beginning like I'm going to here in the demo, but I think it's good to know how it was made, and so that you can edit those as you need to, whether in your own 911 data set or with a totally different data set. So obviously this will work for any data set you have. It doesn't have to be 911. So I'm going to open my geodatabase here. I don't have a data set, so I'm going to start by making that, and I'm just going to right click on the name, say new feature data set. And the database is pre-populated. I'm going to call this required just to match. And then the important thing to know is your coordinate system of your data set has to match the data you want to put into it. So if you have a data set that's in WGS 84, that's what your coordinate system has to be. For this demo, I'm going to stick with state plane, but know that your 911 schemas are likely already in WGS 84. So I'm going to hit run, and that's going to create a data set right here, and it's empty. So now what I'm going to do, because all of these are already in the right coordinate system, I can just grab them and drop them into that data set, and that step is done. We've created that data set. So next is to create the topology inside of that. So I'm going to right click on the name of the data set and say new topology. And that's going to show me all the layers that I have inside that data set. So we can select all of them or just some of them, but each feature class can only participate in one topology. So just know that if you, for some reason, have multiple topologies, they can only live inside of one. So I'm going to just select them all so that I can show you what the next step looks like, and that's adding the rules. And I'm going to start simply here. I'm just going to use my EMS layer. And as you choose your layers, then you can see the types of rules that are available for each layer. So this is a polygon layer, and these are the rules available for polygon layers. I want to check that this EMS layer doesn't have any gaps and that it doesn't have any overlaps. And also want to compare it to the PSAP boundary. I could add the other ones if I wanted, but I want to keep it simple for this, so I'm going to leave that. If I hit next, I'm going to get just a summary of what I did, and then I'll hit finish. And that's going to create the topology within the data set here. So what I'm going to do now while we're talking about setting it up is look at the topology that came with the Illinois schema. If you just right click on it and hit properties, you can get back to this window where you can see all the feature classes that are within it and the rules that are within it. So this has all the rules populated. If you've run topology on multiple layers at the same time, you'll know it gets really messy. And so it is nice to save this for the end when you've cleaned them up individually, like I'm going to show you with the EMS, is to run through each one, run through the EMS, run through the fire, get those cleaned up as much as you can individually before you throw them all in together. And this is one way where you could do that. I could remove these rules if I just wanted to see the law. I can pick and choose. And then say I've done that, I've removed all the rules for whatever reason, but now I want to get back to where they were. You can load existing. If you've saved your rules as a .rul file, then you can go find that. So I have that folder open here. I'm going to go find it. So the state of Illinois has given us a rule file where I can just go find that. And then all those rules populate again. So that is nice when you're kind of flipping back and forth between layers. You don't have to lose that work you did. You just have to make sure you've saved it as a rule file. So I'm going to close that. That's probably the last I'll talk about that, but I did want to show what you might have had pre-populated for you. So close this. Now that we've got the rules, they're just sitting here in the data set. So I'm going to bring this in to my map. It is going to bring all the layers in again, but I don't want those because I already have them symbolized the way I want them. So it's added this to my table of contents, this layer that shows my the errors. This dirty area will show any area that's been edited since the last time you validated. That's very nice to keep track of those areas as you're cleaning up your data. So I'm going to leave that on, but now it's just sitting there. And to open the table where you'll interact with it is this error inspector. So up here under edit, you go to error inspector. And there's no, it's not been validated, so there are no errors. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out all the way and hit validate. And so that there are no dirty areas because I validated it all. And now I've got 215 errors in my window. So there's a couple ways to interact with this table. You can filter by view. So as I zoom in, that I'm only seeing the 14 errors that are inside my window. That's nice to do as you're cleaning up. You can also filter by error. So I want to look at just the EMS where they don't have gaps. So there's only 4 of those in this window. If I zoom out, there's 123 overall. You can also toggle on and off the layers over here. So the gaps will show up as line errors. So I'm going to turn off the polygon errors just to clean that up a little bit. And I'm only seeing those. I've got a couple bookmarks where I'm going to zoom in to specific errors so I can show you how we clean those up. First, I want to make sure I didn't skip any things I wanted to talk about. Nope. Okay, so we can, through the table, if you right click, you can zoom to an error and it'll take you right to it, which is nice. There is a preview window over here with some details. Sometimes there are automatic fixes. I have not had a lot of luck with those, so I don't normally use those. In this case, what it would do is create a feature out of that gap area. So there may be cases where that is helpful to you, but I have not found that yet to be helpful, but they are trying to make this as automated as possible. I'm going to swing to a couple bookmarks that I have to show some errors. Okay, So one, I mainly use 3 tools when I'm cleaning up, and this is where Pro kind of stands out over ArcMap. Obviously you could do edit vertices in either one, but sometimes the right answer is to find the one vertice that's in the wrong spot and make those updates. But I frequently will reach for the reshape tool, which I will show you in a minute, as well as the align feature tool. Those are 2 tools that are pretty powerful and can make this error cleanup go pretty quickly. But I'm going to start with edit vertices first. I'm going to select clear. I'm going to turn off the PSAT boundaries so I stop selecting that. I'm going to look at my vertices. So if I flip back and forth between these 2, it's pretty obvious that the problem is this vertice. So if you were cleaning up, obviously you'd want to figure out which line was right. I'm going to go ahead and assume that this polygon is right and I need to delete this vertice. So I'm just going to delete it, the check mark, so that is clear. And I'm getting layers not editable. Okay, so I'm going to do something real quick to remove these. Just to see. I did get this earlier and I had to restart Pro, so I'm going to hope that I don't have to do that here. Symbolize these quickly. Okay. Let's hope this, now I can edit. Oh. So what this would do, I'm gonna have to restart Pro, I believe, is allow me to edit that, though it looks like maybe it worked. So I'm gonna hit clear, save those, and validate. All right, so even though it says it failed, it does look like that vertice is gone. Let's see if it'll let me save. So every time I validate, it's going to say I need to save edits because it's trying to save edits on the validation itself. So I do have one fewer. Let's zoom to this. Okay, and then because I validated within this little window, that's where my dirty area went away. So I usually will do some cleanup and then come back, zoom out a little bit, and clean those up so I can see fewer of those errors. I'm going to go to the next one and see if that will cooperate with me too. So here I've got a boundary. Here's my gap. Again, I'm going to just presume that that this pink boundary is the one that I want to match. So this is the one that's in error, and I'm going to use the reshape tool. And this tool is really nice because what I can do is trace. I'm going to hit the trace button down here. And as long as I start outside of this error, and I'm going to make sure, so you can, hopefully you can see that, but as I move to one side of the line or the other, it's choosing which line I want to trace. And then I'm going to get outside the error and double click. And this is why you want to be outside of the error, because it must intersect in 2 places. So let me make sure. I've got those on. Live demos can be so much fun. I'm going to reshape this one and say trace. I'm going to get outside the error. Whoops, come on the inside. This can be tricky, but when it works, it is incredibly powerful. So now I believe that I've matched those. I'm going to revalidate, and I have one less error. I think what I am seeing in the background is the PSAP errors. So what I'm going to show you is how I can go back to my catalog, my required topology, and I'm just going to remove this error because I don't want to see it. I think that's what's causing, that's what I'm seeing in the background. You get an error if you haven't saved your edits. So it's just telling you you have to save your edits before you go make changes to the topology. So I'm going to do that. Remove that error. And now that's what we were seeing in the background. So that's where knowing which areas you want to attack at one time is really helpful. It makes this process go a lot faster. So now I want to show, I'll go ahead and revalidate there. I want to show the other tool that I like to use, which is align features. So this, I'm going to select the features I want to align. I want to align both of these features, 25 and 31. And then I'm going to draw, which will trace an alignment path. So this would require knowing which side you wanted to be on, or maybe a third layer. Maybe you've got a parcel boundary that you want to trace, and that's where you want both of those lines to snap to. So you would have to know exactly where you want to draw that line. For now, I'm just going to do pretty much the same thing I did before. I'm going to trace here, and I'm going to double click to end it. So that's my alignment path. Any boundary within the tolerance that I give it, so I'm going to give it a 5-foot tolerance, will snap to that line that I just drew. You can do one side if you want to do it. Sometimes that is useful. Right now I want to do both sides of that line, and I'm going to hit align and then validate, and it cleared that error. So those are two tools that, again, I don't believe are in ArcMap. They weren't when I was using ArcMap, and are really powerful when you're trying to clean up those errors. So then I'm going to go back to my bookmarks, and I want to show some overlaps. So I'm going to go back down here and filter by overlap so I can see those. And overlaps show up as polygon errors. So it creates a polygon in the area where those two have overlapped. So I am going to, again, usually when it's a short segment, I will start by just looking at the vertices. Is there something quick I can do to fix it? And indeed, in this case, I can just clear that vertice. Again, if that was the right side of the line I wanted to be on, validate, and then that is clear. What's so great about the immediate feedback is that if you make it worse for whatever reason, you see that right away, and you can work through all these pretty quickly. The number of errors can be deceiving, because sometimes there are 5 or 6 errors in one section. So don't be afraid if you see a really large number of errors that you need to clean up. They can be cleaned up pretty quickly using these tools. Here's another one that I probably won't have time to actually, let me revalidate, fix, but I wanted to show you sometimes they are more complicated. So this boundary here, I'm going to select here. I've got 2 boundaries in this red area. So for some reason, this one kind of bled into this boundary here. So I would want to clean all of those up. And in this case, I'd probably use a couple different tools. I would use, I might use edit vertices first and kind of clear off all these that I know I didn't need. And then I might go back in here, and then I can validate again and see where those remaining overlaps are. So I got rid of most of it, and I've got some in here to clean up. So you don't have to try to get it all at once. You can do it incrementally as you need to. And then the other powerful thing I wanted to show, let me go ahead and validate that so we don't have any errors, is this drop down here. Let me go to a bookmark. So let's say that you have an annexation, and both of these polygons need to move. Well, I don't have any errors here, so I know topologically these two are in good shape. And I mean, this could be after you have all your topology cleaned up, or even before. So in this case, I know this isn't good, but this part is good, and I don't want to introduce any more errors. So I'm going to come up here to topology and click on required topology. And what that does is it forces feature continuity when editing. So I've got that turned on. I want to edit vertices of this polygon here. And so you'll notice when you've got something up, a topology chosen up there in that corner, you've got this additional edges feature. And so now I can select this edge. And what that'll do is as I make edits to this, I'm just going to make up a change to this boundary and I hit OK. It's going to change both of those boundaries. That purple is on because I have the edits. But if I validate here, then I have snapped both of those at the same time using the same tool without introducing any errors. So that is incredibly powerful. You don't actually have to have a topology in your map to access that. So I'm going to remove this. We'll save my edits. So I don't actually have, I do have required topology in the database, but you can just use it with map topology too. So if you have a map where you know you've got boundaries that are stacked on top of each other appropriately, then you can use the map topology and it'll do the same thing. As you move one layer, the one adjacent to it will as well. Also, I know, Bill, we're running out of time. Last thing I want to say is if I had my fire boundary in here as well, and those were on top of each other, which they're not, I picked a bad one, of course. It could move multiple layers worth of data at the same time. So if I needed both the fire and the EMS layer to move, and they were part of that topology, then they would both move at the same time. And that is once you have your topology cleaned up, where it's really powerful and will help you maintain those boundaries more efficiently. So Bill, I think that's it.
All right. No, hey, that was great and good recovery there. A little hiccup with the Pro. These things happen, of course, but not a problem.
It's real life, right?
Exactly. Let's see. I'm going to share back over to some contact info for you guys. So again, thank you very much for attending today. I'm going to put some links. Let's see. Questions. I don't see anything submitted, guys. We'll give it a couple minutes here. If you have any questions, go ahead and submit those and we can try to answer them. While that's happening, I'm going to send some links. If you need any more help or more information specifically on what we can do to help your organization with your GIS data for 911, visit cloudpointgeo.com/NG9-1-1.